There's a school resource officer who decided to beat up a child inside of the classroom. Here's the video. The video has no sound, so I would narrate some of it. There's a dispute between the resource officer, who by the way is not a police officer, does not work for that jurisdiction, is a resource officer just inside of the school. Here's the first assault, okay? There's a school teacher there who does nothing about the first assault. Here's the second assault. You see, culture does that to a person. Culture. You believe that badge and that uniform grants you special powers. Nobody would believe putting hands on a child like that would lead to a protected situation. Everyone believes if you do this, you will get arrested, except for that guy. He believed he was in the right. School resource officer has now been charged with assault of this high school student. The officer threw the student against the whiteboard, then pushed him to the ground. The incident transpired when the officer, who has yet to be identified by the way, entered a classroom and confronted a student. According to a news release from Superintendent James Henderson of Proviso Township High School's District 209. The officer, according to the narrative, made demands of the student, proceeded to grab him, throw the student against the whiteboard, and then restrain him. Henderson called the officer's actions an unprompted assault on a child who was not a threat to himself or anyone else. He was not combative. He was not engaging in any disruptive behavior. That's what the school's chief said. Good for the chief, and I agree with that statement. The school staff quickly called the authorities on the officer. The officer was later arrested, so the officer has been charged. Now, here's another caveat to this story. The Illinois police, they got all upset at the media because they kept calling this guy a police officer when in fact he's a school resource officer. And because people in the media just called him a police officer rather than a school resource officer, the Illinois police said he is not a police officer with our division, okay? Because I guess they were saying our cops would have gotten away with it. I don't know. Policing as a culture needs to be checked, regardless of the distinction that makes no difference. This guy was a figure of authority with a gun and a badge and a uniform with policing ability. Does that fix it for you, Illinois? All right, Morgan, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's sad to see that kind of situation happening in an educational environment, right? I mean, we want our kids to be able to show up to school to learn, and assault should never be on the table by someone who's getting paid by the school system. So, you should be able to receive the proper training, handle situations as they arise, but a student getting assaulted while in a school building by an officer that is tasked with protection doesn't seem like an outcome that reflects the values of what we should be seeking from our education systems.
And I agree with everything you said. And let me go a step further, because I remember what it was like teaching in the classroom. I'm a former high school teacher myself. That resource officer doesn't come in there unless you call them. That teacher, somebody inside of that room called that resource officer in. Here's the reality. We have gone over these statistics on Indisputable many times. The pipeline between classroom to prison is staggering for students, period, in particular black and brown students. Anytime you call a resource officer, a cop who is at your school, employed at the institution, you have to understand what you're calling into the room. You are calling into the room a gun. That's what you're calling into the room. You're calling into the room a person who has been trained to deal with people in a particular way, and sometimes they lack the humanity necessary to do the job. I know school resource officers. There are some that I have fellowship with in the city of Atlanta. For the most part, these are good people who look at their job as an opportunity to mentor and to guide, not to do that. So the culture has to change, even though in writing what this cop did was wrong. Culture will eat policy alive every day. It's not about the policy, It's about the person. And you got to get new people in those positions in order to make something, in order to get change and transformation.